بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبا القاسم محمد وعلى آل محمد. With his name I begin, with the best of blessings upon the noblest of prophets and the Lord and beloved of our hearts, Muhammad and his holy progeny. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When we hear the word sacrifice, a number of questions come to mind, such as, why do people sacrifice their lives for the sake or for a cause? And what is the psychology behind such an act? This series we have explored so far looks at some of the core of basic human psychological concepts: mourning, friendship, racism, acceptance, repentance, motivation, courage, parenting, and vulnerability. Sacrifice is again another fascinating concept where we can include all of them mentioned to explore from a psychological perspective as well. There are a few theories around explaining sacrifice. One is the evolutionary perspective. Dr. Harvey Whitehouse, who's an Oxford anthropologist, says that people are willing to give their lives for the sake of their groups because they are driven by identity fusion, where they hold a shared essence and visceral sense of oneness with the group, to the point that the survival of the group constitutes a form of personal immortality. This results where an attack on the group is seen as an attack on the individual because the boundary between the personal and the group identity is permeable. As seen in the previous talk on altruism and courage, we know that people are more likely to help others when they are in danger, and distress is a form of compassion as well. In the evolutionary context, people are more likely to sacrifice their lives for those they're more likely to help. Since our family members share most of our genes, and if we're helping them survive and reproduce, then we are indirectly helping our own genes survive and reproduce. Ergo, we're most likely to help those who are related to us. So in other words, the more the genetic relatedness, the greater our help would be. So we would be more likely to help our father, mother, sister, brother than our uncle, aunt, cousin, or even less than a random or unrelated stranger. So this is also known as Hamilton's rule and has been studied in the animal kingdom type of research. The degree of help is related to the closeness of kinship. There are circumstances that arise where sacrificing your own life to help your close kin can become an actual option. For example, if this ultimate sacrifice can guarantee the close kin's chances of survival and reproduction, they may do it. If one's own chances of survival and reproduction are not high in the evolutionary sense, it makes sense to just give up one's own life. If doing so increases the odds of survival and reproductive success of those closest of kin. In self-sacrifice circumstances, you see this as a common pattern where the chances of survival and reproductive success of the person who does not sacrifice are small in his own mind compared to those that they give up their lives for. So people can have self-sacrifice for distant relatives and strangers and for causes, and studies and psychologists have found that just getting to people to think about the suffering of others, this activates the vagus nerve, which is associated with compassion. So reading uplifting stories about sacrifices increases empathy, similarly to partaking in spiritual practices such as du'as, prayers, contemplation, yoga, and engaging with nature. So we know this when being in the Husseini Majlis, we experience this type of compassion and empathy, which can also allow us to contribute to helping others, donate, charities, and doing thawab. So when it comes down to sacrificing lives for our community, country, let's say our ethnicity, religion, or cause, all of these can be thought of as extended families. Even if not, obviously, the people in your country will be closely related to you. They are related to you more than somebody from another country in this sense. So this idea can be applied, for example, to soldiers who sacrifice their life for their country. They're doing it for their own kin. In our faith, we call each other brothers and sisters, right? So even if we're not related, we are part of a kinship. And this uses our psychological mechanism to help bond and engage and connect with our kin. And if we help strangers or unrelated people, the chances that those genes or most of our genes rather would get to the next generation. So this happened, and it did happen, but in very rare demand special circumstances. Do you get where I'm going with this? When a person sacrifices their life for people they're unrelated to, they end up saving the lives of many others. The cost-benefit scale here is making the benefit side of the self-sacrifice more. When there is low probability of one's survival and reproduction, or one has already successfully, let's say, reproduced, then the cause or life of the others has more value than their own life. And as seen by the poets who lament, as though Imam Hussain says, if the religion of Muhammad does not stand upright except by my death, then O swords, take me. This is attributed to poets who've said this as though Imam Hussain was saying this. Now, this is quite a very powerful and fascinating example of the psychology of sacrifice in action. Right there. I have to admit that this particular talk has been by far the most challenging talk of putting the ideas together, as how can one even begin to start explaining the sacrifice of the Imam from any perspective? But this is part of what these holy days and nights are all about, to make us reflect, to make us contemplate, to awaken that sleeping self that has been just caught up in the worldly matters too much, and especially in the world that we have been in the last few months in the pandemic. The inspiring self-sacrifice of the Imam was based on love. Yes, we looked at all of these psychological concepts and studies and theories, and we can connect to some of these ideas, but when it comes down to it, it was based on love and the full tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ensure that his grandfather's religion would be restored back to how it was supposed to be, and not in the direction that it was heading under the rule of the tyrant Yazid and the likes of such. And it took the sacrifice of a small number of his men, the male members of his family, except for Imam Zain al-Abidin, and his baby, and of course his life, the capture of his sister and the women and the children, the brutality that they experienced. It took all of that for the nation to finally awaken. And had it not been for that sacrifice, we would not know our religion today. As women, we would not be wearing the hijab. We would not know our prayer. It would not be as such. Now, a recent study showed that shared negative experiences are a powerful mechanism for promoting pro-social behaviors, at the cost, of course, to the individual who sacrifices. This, again, is something that we see with what happened with the Imam and his mission and his goals in terms to saving the religion of Islam and doing nahi anil munkar. And the whole of the tragic events that took place on the plains of Karbala has led to this pro-social awakening of the Ummah back then and into the centuries today as we see it. It was for the survival of the religion of Islam to go back to its origins of the Prophet rather than in the hands of the tyrants. And the Imam knew this. And this was his intent all along, and refusing to live the humiliation of such people. Never to humiliation was his path. And forgive me if I cannot get into the details of the martyrdom of the Imam. I wouldn't be able to complete it. I wouldn't be able to complete what I'd have to say about that. It's just far too emotional. However, I will share the words of my dear brother from Australia, Mahmoud Hijazi, with an epic poem of Ya Hussein, I say. Ya Hussein, I say. A name which renders the heart torn apart and the veins are in flames. Ya Hussein, I say. Words which trigger pains in the souls of the righteous names. O righteous sage, Ya Hussein, your name I say. A slogan cemented in the core, Ya Hussein, turns the ripples into waves crashing on the shore of the generations that later came and the prophets before. The allure of the pure, to shed tears for the swords and the spears you endured, to offer it all and leave nothing. But for your Lord you asked with your eyes to the sky, are you satisfied? If not, take more. while millions upon millions ask the same Lord to take from our souls blessings and bestow upon yours. Ya Hussein, I say, the name of the pure, whose sacrifice was a key that opened a door I walked through. And how can I explain in the sacrifice what I saw? I just say Ya Hussein as I give others the tour. I saw in the sacrifice the sacrificial lamp of Abraham. Only you, the blade reaches. Every time I try to explain your pained features, I get lost in emotion. While your lovers are facing the same creatures, every day is Ashura for what this day teaches. While every land we turn into Karbala, sands we stand on and sink, I'm still trying to understand and think. While in the room, I saw in your sacrifice what the sea did for Moses. Only every drop of your blood was an ocean. As each one opened, your lovers walked through to safety right before it drowned your opponents. And all I could say was Ya Hussein. I pray that the day, night might come when I see in Karbala beauty as Zainab perceived. For the room I felt what Mukhtar felt, a pain that only payback relieved, a pain that rivals bones breaking and hearts are left sore. This is what I saw with one foot in the door. Through my head peeked, you raised the baby Abdullah when his life had ceased, like Maryam holding up Jesus among the doubters. On your enemies the look of defeat resembled the faces of those who heard baby Isa speak. But for Abdullah, a headed arrow as thick as a spear dripped from it poison. The message was clear. A sharp arrow's tipped through soft bones, it slipped. Ya Hussein, who felt the baby's hand loosen its grip. Our message to you and those who are near. For Allah, we belong to Allah. Do we fear? To Allah we shall return. Only the word of Allah we adhere. For you, Ya Hussein, we liquefied victory when we offered the tears. I peered at the verses framed on the wall in the room. I recall this lesson from what I saw. When our Imam calls, Ya Hussein, we say, as we beckon the call. Ya Hussein, we say, whether we lay or stand tall, for we advance through our stance. Ya Abbas to the hordes, I saw victory in the hands of the man who would fall. In your death, Ya Hussein, you were not defeated at all. Ya Hussein, your grandfather, salawatullah alayhi, would cry as he would say, in your final days you would suffer a sacrifice, rivaled wallahi by no other. I tell my Christian brother Hussein and his disciples had no Last Supper. No inch was given. By what was this madness driven? But the thousands and thousands of homes bearing the name of Hussein, where the ones who visit are forgotten, are proof beyond doubt that his enemies are gone, while the one who fell in Karbala, he is risen. On the walls in this room are Karbala sand. Wipe it with your palm and you will find poetry written in blood in your hand, saying, a sheep before it's killed is first given water. But I am Hussein, who was dying of thirst before his slaughter. I am Hussein, who faced all the cursing and torture. I am Hussein, cut off from each corner, not given a quarter. I am Hussein, the son of Ali and the Prophet's beloved daughter. Ya Hussein, you would read as your heart would bleed and teardrops would fall from your eyes. Every soldier and steed stayed true to the creed till after their final goodbyes. Companions would heed no matter the deed or any end that ahead of them lies. Many indeed like Zuhair or Habib, whose voice in the room still preside, from this world released, they gave him their peace. Last words of all of those who died. In the room, I cried my eyes to sleep. The scene, a serene dream, where all those who screamed, Ya Hussein, their faces would gleam. The mightiest team of companions the world had ever seen were set by a glistening stream, listening keen to a teen dressed in white, shrouded in green, saying, what did it matter if I fell upon death or death fell upon me? On the path of Hussein, the reviver of the deen, we marched with Hussein through the filth of the dunya and came out righteous and clean. I awoke with a smile back in the room to find it had grown so much so soon. Not soon enough. Its walls were shining and long were its halls. By all that is holy, it was Joseph's well, where the young prophet took his fall. In waking from my slumber, this room made Joseph's palaces look small. Ya Hussein, I'd call. I saw the great love, and how much I lacked it. Scenes and ideas from within around Karbala before my eyes were reenacted. All these men for Hussein gave up their lives. I saw an old man, frail and past his prime, yet stood like a ferocious lion, yearning to dine, screaming, I will kill you if you approach this master of mine. The lesson you will find, the heart that yearns for you, Ya Hussein, does not succumb to the will of time. I saw a man who threw his henna in a basket of water, a basket of waste, brushed with his fingers the hair on his face, saying, why place henna when blood this beard will taste? Another man died and then was brought back to life and said again and again and again, 1,000 times again, I will not leave you, my master and friend. Another man looked to the right and then looked to the left. Back and forth he went as he wept before he leaped to the left, face to the ground, and he cried in pain. To the right was the fire, to the left he saw Hussein. And there are those today whose feet are firm like mountains on your path. They stay, my master. Hussein, who would not exchange your knowledge for the pay? For they are not looking for fame or financial gain, for they feel every strike on those who were slain, for they gave up their sons in your way, for they feel those flames in their veins and their heart torn apart when they say your name. Ya Hussein, in this room, the slave will learn that he himself can remove his chain and learn how a servant of God would behave in the face of the rain. The weak become brave in a world where the tyrants rule. In the midst of the heat, how to keep his cool. Insane from his love makes you not a fool. Once you understand, Hussein is not just a teardrop, nor is he a lesson. Hussein is a school. Hussein is a school. And so I leave you with this. How can you apply the concept of sacrifice, inspired by Imam Hussain, into your daily life? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi